The government was created to protect its people, but history has shown that power often grows beyond its original purpose. When agencies operate in secrecy and justify their actions with fear, lines begin to blur between safety and control. Among them were the Central Intelligence Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the National Security Agency. But it quickly expanded its operations, involving itself in regime changes, covert wars, and psychological experiments. The agency soon became a global force, often acting without transparency or accountability. Together, they became known as the Alphabet Agencies, and their influence reached far beyond what most Americans realized. Over time, what starts as protection can become something much darker. The documents describing the program were partially destroyed before Congress could investigate, erasing vital details forever. The agencies monitor famous people to the average guy. Finding evidence is the key. Martin Luther King Jr. is just one example. And it did not stop with King. Countless others were surveilled, smeared, or arrested without just cause. The public would not learn the full truth until decades later, when documents were leaked or declassified. What we know now is only a fraction of what really happened. While the CIA worked in shadows and the FBI moved in silence, the NSA watched everything. From satellites in space to cables under the ocean, they collected data on a scale never seen before. But it quickly became clear that the agency was collecting data from everyone, not just suspected threats. The idea of privacy began to fade as the digital world came under constant observation. During the Cold War, the CIA overthrew governments in Iran, Chile, Guatemala, and other nations to install leaders friendly to American interests. Entire countries were destabilized, economies collapsed, and civil wars raged because of decisions made in secret rooms thousands of miles away, all done under the name of democracy and freedom. These covert actions left scars that still affect politics and societies today. In the aftermath of World War II, the United States formed powerful intelligence agencies designed to monitor foreign threats. The FBI infiltrated anti-war protests, environmental movements, and even religious groups, often labeling peaceful dissenters as enemies of the state. Informants were placed inside organizations, sometimes provoking violence to justify police crackdowns. He questioned the ethics of killing innocent Americans to manipulate public opinion. These centers collect information from schools, hospitals, police departments, and even private businesses. The result is a near-total map of human activity that can be accessed with a few keystrokes. The plan was shelved, but the fact that it existed shows how far agencies were willing to go to achieve their goals. Some of this information is collected during arrests, but much of it is gathered through everyday activities. Devices in your home, car, and pocket are constantly sending signals that can be intercepted. Drones patrol public spaces, while license plate readers track vehicles across highways. While the goal was public health, critics warned that the infrastructure could be used for broader surveillance. News outlets depend on access to officials, classified briefings, and insider quotes. As a result, critical reporting often gives way to vague headlines and partial truths. After the attacks of September 11th, fear gave agencies unprecedented power to monitor, detain, and interrogate. Laws were passed in haste, and programs were activated without proper oversight or long-term planning. Once systems are built, they are rarely dismantled. They are simply repurposed. Its influence now reaches into travel, immigration, disaster response, cybercrime, and border security. With such a broad mission, it has become difficult to define what limits it actually has. These watch lists are difficult to challenge, and many people do not know they are on them until it is too late. These facilities operated outside U.S. law, often in countries where torture was overlooked or encouraged. Suspects were held without trial, denied contact with lawyers, and subjected to extreme methods. You can be flagged, followed, and detained based on vague criteria. Waterboarding, sleep deprivation, stress positions, and psychological manipulation were all used in the name of national security. Reports were published, and apologies were made, but the people responsible were rarely punished. Instead, the system adapted and moved forward with more caution, not less ambition. Even when you turn off permissions, devices often continue collecting data in the background. Governments say this helps stop crime before it happens, but in practice, it creates a system where suspicion replaces evidence. Innocent people can be flagged as threats based on digital patterns and assumptions. You live in a world where privacy is an illusion and exposure is the default state. Once the system labels you as a risk, it becomes difficult to prove otherwise. These systems can detect license plates, identify faces, and even recognize emotions. You are watched constantly, not by people, but by machines that never sleep. The future of policing may rely more on code than on human judgment. These systems are being built quietly and rapidly, with little regulation and almost no transparency. Once your DNA is in the system, it cannot be taken back. Digital borders now exist around every device, every online community, and even your mind. Algorithms decide what you see, what you hear, and how you are categorized. These tools can bypass encryption, activate microphones, and retrieve files without the user ever knowing. These technologies promise convenience, but they also create new vulnerabilities. If your heartbeat can identify you, then it can also be tracked, recorded, and stolen. Programs designed to monitor money laundering and terrorism financing have quietly expanded to cover millions of ordinary transactions. History has shown that unchecked power always tilts toward abuse. And in a world driven by data, control means knowing more about you than you know about yourself. You may never hear the click that adds your name to a list. Every dollar you spend is another data point in your digital profile. It is lost when people stop paying attention, when fear replaces courage, and when convenience becomes more important than rights. The road to control is paved with small, silent steps. Fighting terrorism, preventing crime, and protecting national interests are goals everyone can understand. Patterns that repeat when power goes unchecked. Their missions expanded, their budgets grew, and their actions became harder to trace. Now they stand as giants in the background, shaping the world in ways most people cannot imagine. But power without accountability leads to a different kind of danger. Intelligence agencies use social platforms to shape opinion, stir division, and test reactions. These techniques are not just used abroad, they are used at home, against domestic audiences. The line between foreign propaganda and national messaging has become dangerously thin. The question is what they are doing now, and whether we will ever be allowed to know. Because the most dangerous secrets are not the ones kept from enemies. They are the ones kept from you. The battlefield is now your phone screen, and the weapon is targeted information. What was once science fiction is now part of the national defense strategy. Agencies now monitor blockchain activity, demand access to exchange records, and pressure platforms to comply with new laws. It learns your habits, your fears, and your desires, and it tailors content to guide your behavior. You become both the product and the target. Anonymity in finance is quickly vanishing, replaced by total traceability. When people do not know what to believe, they stop believing anything. And that is when control becomes easiest, when confusion replaces clarity. And since the systems are secretive, challenging the decision becomes nearly impossible. Some detainees were later released without charges, their lives permanently damaged. It became normal for citizens to accept that their digital lives could be searched at any time. Fear made the impossible seem reasonable, and the balance of freedom shifted. Programs like Stuxnet targeted foreign nuclear facilities with precision code designed to cause real-world damage. At the same time, domestic infrastructure remains vulnerable to attack. When journalists reveal inconvenient truths, they are labeled as threats, foreign agents, or enemies of the people. At-home testing kits, promoted as fun and informative, feed genetic material into corporate and sometimes government databases. The implications of this are far beyond entertainment. Airports have become security theaters, where rules are applied inconsistently and often without explanation. The illusion of safety is prioritized over actual effectiveness. The cost of speaking out can be career-ending, or worse. Predictive policing programs analyze crime data to forecast where future crimes might occur. Location, browsing history, voice commands, and movement patterns are all collected and stored. Apps send this data to companies, which often share it with governments either by force or for profit. These courts rarely denied requests, and the public never knew who was being watched or why. Decisions were made without open debate, and legal boundaries became blurry. Edward Snowden is perhaps the most famous, but others like Thomas Drake and William Binney tried to sound the alarm before him. Journalists who report on these leaks face surveillance, raids, and legal threats. The message is clear: exposing the truth is more dangerous than hiding it. Their stories are often buried, discredited, or forgotten entirely. But in practice, these tools often reinforce bias and lead to over-policing in poor and minority neighborhoods. All of this operates quietly in the background, building databases that most people do not know exist. Some individuals discovered thick surveillance folders detailing years of their private lives. This level of monitoring was rarely about justice. It was about power. Phone calls, emails, texts, and location data were quietly harvested, stored, and analyzed. In the early 1960s, military leaders suggested staging fake terrorist attacks on American soil and blaming them on Cuba. The plan included hijacking planes, sinking boats, and killing civilians to build public support for war. Metadata about who called whom, when and from where was catalogued without context or consent. The database of human behavior was growing faster than anyone could control. No warrant was needed, and no one was warned it was happening. Profiles can be built, patterns detected, and decisions made about individuals without their knowledge. Facial recognition software can now track individuals across cities using public cameras and private feeds. Artificial intelligence is being used to analyze speech patterns, predict behavior, and flag potential threats without any human review. The consequences of these systems will not be felt just today, but for generations to come. Test subjects were given LSD and other substances without consent, sometimes under horrific conditions. Hospitals, prisons, and even universities became testing grounds for a government willing to rewrite the human mind. The revelations shocked the world, showing how deep the surveillance state had become. Governments denied wrongdoing, but the truth had already been revealed. The CIA, born from the ashes of wartime espionage, was originally tasked with collecting intelligence abroad. One of its most disturbing programs was MKUltra, a series of experiments designed to explore mind control. Through COINTELPRO, the Bureau infiltrated civil rights movements, activist groups, and political organizations. The goal was not justice but control achieved through surveillance, blackmail, and disruption. People were traumatized, some driven insane, and others lost their lives, all in the name of national security. The FBI, meanwhile, turned its attention inward, targeting American citizens viewed as threats to national stability. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the program's primary targets, spied on relentlessly by the agency. They recorded his private moments and sent anonymous letters urging him to end his own life. It was a coordinated campaign to silence a man whose only weapon was truth. The same agency responsible for protecting the law was manipulating it for political gain. The National Security Agency emerged as the most technologically advanced of the alphabet groups. Initially tasked with foreign intelligence, the NSA expanded its reach to include domestic surveillance. The system was vast, invisible, and deeply invasive, operating under the justification of preventing terrorism. Edward Snowden, a former NSA contractor, leaked classified information in 2013, exposing the full scale of the program. Programs like PRISM allowed direct access to servers at major tech companies, giving the NSA backdoor entry to global communications. And once information is collected, it can be weaponized in ways people never imagine. The alphabet agencies have a long history of shaping global events without public input or ethical restraint. The public was often told these interventions were to stop communism, but deeper motives involved control over oil, trade, and influence. One of the most controversial proposals in American history was Operation Northwoods. The proposal reached President Kennedy, who rejected it outright. Domestically, agencies turned their focus toward internal threats, especially during times of social unrest. People were followed, phone lines were tapped, and files were created on citizens who had never committed crimes. Technology has made surveillance easier, faster, and more invisible than ever before. Fusion centers now link federal, state, and local agencies into a single surveillance network. In some cities, microphones are hidden on streetlights to detect gunshots or aggression. When new technologies emerge, government agencies often adopt them before regulations are in place. Biometric data like fingerprints, iris scans, and voice recognition are now stored in national databases. During the COVID-19 pandemic, contact tracing apps were introduced to monitor virus spread. Whistleblowers have risked everything to reveal what is happening behind closed doors. Those who leak classified information are often charged under the Espionage Act, a law designed to punish spies, not truth-tellers. The media, once a check on government power, has become entangled in the same systems it was meant to monitor. Freedom of the press is still guaranteed by law, but in practice, it is constantly under pressure. The war on terror changed everything about how governments justify surveillance and secrecy. The Patriot Act allowed for broad government access to phone records, financial data, and communications without needing traditional court approval. Secret courts known as FISA courts began approving surveillance requests in near-total secrecy. The Department of Homeland Security was created to coordinate national efforts, but it quickly grew into a massive bureaucracy. TSA agents now screen millions of passengers daily, but studies show that their methods often fail to catch real threats. Outside of airports, the agency runs programs that track travel patterns, flag suspicious behavior, and monitor certain individuals. CIA black sites around the world were used to hold and interrogate suspects in complete secrecy. The government called these actions enhanced interrogation, but many human rights groups called it what it was: torture. Once these actions came to light, there was public outrage but very little accountability. Cyber warfare became the next frontier, and government agencies have poured billions into developing digital weapons. The NSA and other agencies now use hacking tools to access phones, computers, and entire networks. With the rise of smartphones, every person became a walking data beacon. The concept of informed consent has vanished, replaced by vague terms of service and silent agreements. Artificial intelligence is now used to monitor behavior, scan communications, and predict intent. Behavioral algorithms may be biased, inaccurate, or built on flawed data, but they are rarely questioned. In cities across the world, cameras are trained on every corner, feeding footage to real-time analytics software. When mistakes happen, there is little recourse. False positives lead to arrests, detentions, or denied services. The financial systems are also subject to surveillance, with government agencies tracking bank accounts, wire transfers, and even credit card purchases. Cryptocurrencies were seen as an escape from this system, but even those are under increasing scrutiny. In the world of health, government partnerships with private companies have allowed for the collection of DNA data on a massive scale. Imagine a future where your insurance rates, medical treatments, or legal rights are influenced by your genetic profile. Voice recognition, gait analysis, and even heartbeat patterns are now used as biometric identifiers. The fusion of surveillance and artificial intelligence has created tools that governments once only dreamed of. Propaganda has evolved too, moving from radio broadcasts and posters to viral memes and social engineering. False accounts, automated bots, and carefully seeded narratives are used to confuse and influence populations. Every time you click, share, or comment, you feed the system more information. In this environment, truth becomes fluid and trust collapses. The reality is that most of these tools were created with good intentions. The systems that watch you are not evil by nature, but they can become evil through neglect, greed, or corruption. Freedom does not disappear all at once. It erodes slowly, behind closed doors and with quiet votes. You may not see the camera, you may not notice the file, but make no mistake, the system sees you, it remembers, it watches. This is not a story about paranoia. It is a story about patterns in history, in technology, and in human nature. The alphabet agencies were born in a time of war, but they matured in peace. The question is not whether they have done crazy things. Stay curious, stay awake, and never stop asking questions.